Okay, we're ready to start. Can I welcome you all to the meeting of the Learning Communities Overview and Scrutiny Committee. Can I welcome this morning Farouk Khan and Jane McCarthy from Estyn, who are here to give us some feedback on their recent Estyn visit. Can I just go into apologies, please?
Yeah, we got apologies from Councillor Pamela Cameron, Councillor Glyn Caron and Mr Ron Marchant.
Any other apologies members know about? Item 2, declarations of interest. Can I bring in Delith Harris from our legal team to inform us, please?
Thank you, Chair. I'm not aware of any interest that need to be declared by members in relation to that item on the agenda. Thank you, Chair.
Can I just ask you, if our guests pay reference to a specific institution, be it a school or educational place, and we have some connection to it, would we have to declare then?
Yes, if it becomes apparent during the course of the discussions that there is, yes, conversations about particular schools, and you are party to that, yes, then you may wish to declare that you may, for example, be a governor of a school, or if you have somebody working at the school. So yes, you can declare it at that point.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Farouk Khan, and perhaps you'd like to give us a brief summary then of the report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chair, and thank you for this opportunity to feed back on our findings of the final monitoring visit that we undertook in November of last year. If we consider the background first to the authority, we inspected you in October 2011 and we identified the authorities requiring significant improvement. In February 2013, we monitored the progress against the recommendations that we left previously, and we judged that you'd made insufficient progress, and as a result we identified the authority as requiring special measures. We then undertook monitoring visits in May and October 2014 to look at how you had progressed against the recommendations. At that stage, we didn't make judgments on the recommendations. We were just looking at how you were progressing on those. And in November, we undertook the final monitoring visit and we made judgments against each of the recommendations. During this visit, we also looked at the shortcomings that we'd identified previously in the area of additional learning needs. And what we did, we held discussions with senior officers, elected members, partners and other staff, and we also scrutinised a wide range of documentation. At the end of the visit, we fed back our findings, and then we followed that up with the letter that you have in Appendix 1. Okay. Now, I'll just talk you through some of that. On page 6, in section 5.1, we have the judgments that we made against each of the recommendations. Now, the possible outcomes you could have had were limited progress, satisfactory progress, strong progress, or very good progress. And the criteria for those you can find on our website. And what we found was that recommendation 1, which is the one on standards, we judged as that as being making satisfactory progress. Recommendation 2, or the one on NEETs, or those not in education, employment or training, we judged as being strong progress. Recommendation 3, which was the one about evaluating your services, that was satisfactory progress. Recommendation 4 on performance management, that was satisfactory progress. Recommendation 5 on the governance arrangements, we said was strong progress. And then there were 2 additional recommendations that we made, and both of those we said were satisfactory progress. We didn't make a judgment on ALN, but we made some comments in the report on that. In the letter then that we sent you, as I say, you've had the letter before, and what we'll do, rather than read through all the letter, we'll just sort of pick out points and just summarise some of the recommendations, or all the recommendations in that report, and just bring those out for you. Okay? On page 10 then first, under the background, we comment that following our visit in 2013, you had a recovery board established whose role was to provide support and challenge to the authority. We also said that you've restructured and strengthened the education service, and you also established the Children and Young People's Improvement Board, which is intended to be the main governance structure for driving improvements. We also said that the Children and Young People's Improvement Board works well with the Recovery Board, members and senior officers to build its capacity to improve education services. Okay, so we'll move on to recommendation 1 then, and my colleague Jane McCarthy will present a summary of recommendation 1.
Thank you. Recommendation 1 is to raise... recommendation 1 was to raise standards in secondary schools, particularly in Key Stage 4. And as Farouk said, the authority has made satisfactory progress in addressing this recommendation. The good features that we saw during the monitoring visit were improved outcomes in Key Stage 4 since 2013, and these had improved at a faster rate than across Wales, but the report does note that it was coming from a low baseline. We saw improvements in the Level 2 threshold, which is the pupils achieving GCSE A to C, including English or Welsh, first language and mathematics, so there were improvements there. There were improvements in the performance of pupils eligible for free school meals in Key Stage 4. And then it wasn't only about Key Stage 4, it says particularly in Key Stage 4, so we also looked at Key Stage 3 improvements. They show general improvement there, but we'll say more about the assessment issue as we move through the report. There was good improvements in Welsh second language in Key Stage 3 and 4. Okay, so there was strengths there that we noted. However, looking more widely, there was a decline in the foundation phase in Key Stage 2 outcomes, and I think the authority expected this because of the recalibration of your teacher assessment and your drive to ensure that you've got reliable teacher assessment at the end of the foundation phase, Key Stage 2 and Key Stage 3. The local authority failed to meet any of its benchmark targets in 2015, and there was a varied picture prior to that. The targets that Welsh Government set are for Key Stage 3 for the core subject indicator, which are the pupils who achieve the expected level in English or Welsh, mathematics and science, and Key Stage 4, the Level 2, which includes maths, English or Welsh, and the average capped point score. So in 2015, you were below the expected progress in those. And pupil progress in the average cap point score remains below expectations and has been for some time. In addition, we noted that standards in literacy and numeracy are weak, and support for these priority areas has been slow to improve pupil skills. And we'll say a bit more about that. I know you've got some questions about that I'll say a bit more on later on. Okay, do you want to ask anything now, or do you want to wait until later?
The end, or do you want to take them as we go through? Would you like to carry on? Yeah, thanks.
Okay. So Farouk's going to give you an overview of the recommendation 2.
Okay. Recommendation 2 then, onto page 12. And that's the recommendation was to take action to reduce the number of young people who are not in education, employment or training. And we said you made strong progress in addressing this recommendation. What we said is that through the leader, chief executive and assistant chief executive, you've greatly improved your focus on children and young people who are not in education, employment or training. And as a result, the pace of progress in addressing that area has improved. The percentage of year 11 leavers who are not in education, employment or training has reduced since 2013. So you've gone since our visit. So it's 5.5% you had in 2012, down to 2.2% in 2014, and we had unverified data from you as well, which suggested that it had reduced even further for 2015. We said that moved the authority from being amongst the worst in Wales to going to be around the average. It had sort of, with regards to comparing to Wales, you sort of dropped slightly from 2013 to 2014, but you're still in a stronger position to where you were before. At Key Stage 2, we talked about some of the ways that you've done this. So you've got the enhanced transition model at Key Stage 2 to Key Stage 3, which identifies those young people that are at risk of being excluded or at risk of becoming NEETs. Then you've got the RONI indicator, the risk of NEETs indicator that you use. And then at post-16 you use the data from Careers Wales to identify those learners. So you're able to identify those learners that are at risk of becoming NEET. And then as a result of that, you've also been able to coordinate the services that you provide to be able to better address those areas. So the partners you've got ensure that there's a good range of suitable interventions, and through the working of some of those groups, for example, the Positive Pathways group and the Keeping in Touch group, you're able to address those areas, and they all report to the Children and Young People's Improvement Board. We also talk about the social clauses that you have, which provide work experience opportunities for young people as part of contracts for building work. But what we've said that is, however, they're not monitored closely enough to be able to fully demonstrate their impact. And then on page 13, we talk about the 6 monthly reports to the Children and Young People's Improvement Board. And we've said that overall there's improved partnership working amongst the different agencies involved in supporting young people who are not in education and employment or training or risk of becoming that. Okay, so if we move on then to recommendation 3, which I'll hand over to Jane. Thank you.
Recommendation 3 was to improve the quality and consistency of the evaluation of services to inform planning more effectively. And this was a recommendation that was made in 2011 and monitored in 2013. What we found in 2011 was that the self-evaluation report lacked detail and did not recognise well enough the progress the authority was making and the areas that needed to be improved. When we returned in 2013, the recommendation hadn't been addressed. However, by 2015, we're saying that the authority has improved its arrangements for evaluating its performance. Officers and staff and elected members have a better understanding of the performance data from schools, and as a result there's a clearer corporate understanding of the strengths and areas for development in the education service. The current self-evaluation document is an open and honest evaluation of the education service's work. So what we're saying there is that you now have a good understanding of exactly what is effective and what needs to be improved. And this is, we found this at a corporate level, so everybody we spoke to had a clear idea of what the strengths were and what needed to be improved right across the education service. There's now a much more realistic picture of pupil performance among schools, officers and elected members. And we also found in terms of self-evaluation, there's a greater role played by schools and by the whole education community. There's closer collaboration and improved relationships between officers and school leaders are playing a greater role in self-evaluation processes, and we'll come on to driving improvements in a moment, but obviously that's very closely linked. Okay, so that's recommendation 3, and recommendation 4 is closely linked to that one.
Okay, recommendation 4 then on page 14 was to improve the performance management of services to ensure a consistent approach in delivering improvements, and we said the authorities made satisfactory progress in addressing this recommendation. We've said that you've worked well with the Recovery Board to bring about significant changes in performance management. They've restructured at corporate and service level, and because of that, there's a greater capacity there to manage education services. Relationships with schools have improved as well, and this level of trust now enables mutual challenge. We've said you're working well with the Education Achievement Service. We've also said then that you've got a head of learning whose role includes monitoring the quality and effectiveness of the Education Achievement Service. And this has resulted in better working relationships with schools, and it's strengthened your ability to hold the Education Achievement Service to account. Senior officers, elected members and partners have an improved understanding of performance, and we've said that members of scrutiny have received effective training for challenging performance. As a result, they've become better informed and skilled in the analysis of school performance data and are able to challenge and hold services and officers to account more effectively. We've said performance management processes are now more robust and better aligned through corporate, service, unit and individual staff levels. As a result, you have greater understanding of the key issues facing the Council and collective ownership across the Cabinet, senior leadership and officers of what needs to be done to address areas of concern. And then on to Recommendation 5 on page 15. And Recommendation 5 was about implementing effective governance arrangements for the work of the Children and Young People's Partnership to ensure all services for children and young people in Torfaen are managed appropriately. And we said the authorities made strong progress in addressing this recommendation. What we said that you disbanded the Children and Young People's Partnership because its activities were included in the single plan. But then you recognised the need to re-establish a partnership structure to oversee the delivery of the local service board's priorities for children and young people. So you established the Children and Young People's Improvement Board. The level of membership of that board, we said was at a senior level. You've got the executive member for education, chief executive, assistant chief executive, and they provide strong leadership, and that's their involvement indicates the high profile that you give to this board. Though we found that the board has a willingness to engage in honest discussions, and this helps to establish a constructive and open culture, and all partners demonstrate a clear commitment to finding better ways of working together to improve outcomes for children and young people. We also talk about the early intervention and prevention strategy, Don't Walk On By. And we said that's had a positive impact on the way the partners work together to support individual children and young people and their families, and partners are more consistently adopting a team around the family approach to their work. As a result, support is better coordinated and targeted at those in greatest need. We also said that educational outcomes have been a key priority for the Children and Young People's Improvement Board. The terms of reference identify their role to monitor progress and provide additional direction and support to ensure that performance of schools is improved. Partners have worked closely with the Recovery Board and the Education Service to improve their knowledge of education in Torfaen. The Children and Young People's Improvement Board has helped to maintain a focus on educational improvement through regular updates and reports from the local authority and the Regional School Improvement Service. And then the two additional recommendations, I'll hand over to Jane.
Okay, thank you. The additional recommendation related to school improvement is to make sure that the arrangements for delivering school improvement services challenge and support all schools effectively in order to improve quickly standards for all learners and those in secondary schools in particular. So this is very much related to recommendation 1 on improving standards for pupils. So some of this you will have heard as we've gone through the report already. We talk in this recommendation about the way the local authorities improve its arrangements for delivering the school improvement services. Farouk's already told about the changing key positions within the education department. We've talked about the improved relationship with schools and head teachers, and that important aspect of work you've taken on, or schools and the local authority have taken on, to improve the reliability of teacher assessment. And we noted that schools are much more involved now in shaping and constructing policy with the local authority. We talked already about the better use of performance data and using this more effectively to prioritise work for schools to bring about improvements. And we've talked about self-evaluation. We did feel that the local authority's evaluation of performance data across the secondary schools wasn't using the full range. And we spoke to officers about that during the inspection. So that there is more work to be done on the full range of performance indicators at Key Stage 4. We also spoke about the improved relationship with EAS and improved challenge to ensure that the services you get for your schools are providing the job that they need to do. And we noted that. But we did note that, as I said earlier, support to improve priority areas such as literacy and numeracy has been slow. We also noted positively that since 2013 you've had a lower than average proportion of schools being identified as needing follow-up following ESTIN inspections, and that the authority has been quick to move those schools forward. So some positives there, but also some areas to develop. And then the additional recommendation that was related to recommendation 3. The additional recommendation was to improve the use of outcome measures for self-evaluation, so to be clearer about the measures that you're using to gauge your success or the local authority's success in moving forwards. It actually said to improve the use of outcome measures for self-evaluation and reporting by the Education Service and partnership bodies in order to plan services better, to monitor performance more accurately, and to hold individual services more to account. So what we're saying here is that in 2013, ESTIN judged that the success measures used did not enable managers to demonstrate sufficiently the impact of their actions. And this is how this additional recommendation came about. But we've noticed since then that there is a more focused use of outcome measures in planning documents across the Council. The CYPIB partnership framework contains relevant outcome indicators for each of its core aims, and officers in the Education Service have prioritised areas for improvement in the Education Service plan, and these now have key tracking measures, so you can look at times throughout the year and see how you are progressing against those. We've already talked about senior leaders having a clearer understanding of performance, and the processes that have been put in place within the authority are now helping you to hold officers to account more effectively. We do talk about these processes being relatively new, and I think with all the things that I've spoken about in relation to the recommendations that I looked at, we do feel that some of the work is at an early stage of development, which is why we're judging satisfactory progress. You've put processes in place, but they have yet to impact on learner outcomes. So we've said that the work to realign assessment is at an early stage of development, and I know you've got some questions around that a bit later on. We've got the self-evaluation. It doesn't include the full range of school performance indicators, for example, the average CAP point score, or the performance of more able pupils. And as I said, the work is relatively new, so it has yet to impact on the outcomes for learners. And we'll say a bit more about that when you ask your questions. Thank you.
Continuing on page 17, then the provision for additional learning needs. Although this wasn't a recommendation, it was highlighted as an area that needed to be addressed, and it was an area that we looked at during the final monitoring visit. And what we said that you've restructured the additional learning needs service to include an appropriate focus on vulnerable groups, and you appointed an ALN link officer for each school. In addition, you've delegated ALN funding to schools, and now there's much closer working between the special school and schools with special needs resource bases. But we said, however, many of these developments are recent, and it's too early to evaluate their impact. Then the next steps, then, as a result, what we did after coming to judgments on the recommendations is debated whether we felt you needed to stay in special measures or come out. And the judgment was that you come out of special measures. And we, in doing that, we didn't leave any formal recommendations as such for you to follow or ask for a formal action plan. However, we did put in next steps. And the next steps we've asked for you to look at is on focusing your performance against a wider range of national benchmark indicators at Key Stage 3 and Key Stage 4. I've said, self-evaluation tended to focus on Key Stage 4, Level 2, inclusive English or Welsh and Maths, rather than the broader range, as Jane has already mentioned. We've also said that you should also prioritise the improvement of pupils' literacy and numeracy skills across all key stages, because those are transferable skills as well, which will help in all other subjects. We also said the recent work of the Recovery Board has helped to guide the authority in its improvement work, and that the authority should consider ongoing engagement with external experts to ensure that the pace of improvement continues. So now you've got a question about that as well. And we said that your link inspectors will continue to work with the authority in their normal link role. And back to the Chair. Thank you.
Okay, members, we have a list of sort of questions today, so who's going to start? Nigel?
Thank you, Chair. And good morning, and thank you for your report. We're going to start on the first recommendation and about the Key Stage 4 attainment. To what extent would you say that recent Key Stage 4 attainment has been a result of poor foundations in the earlier key stages?
Yes, I'm going to answer that. Thank you. Yes, you're quite right to bring that question forward, because obviously pupils who are behind, as research has shown that pupils who are behind at 7 fall further behind at 11 and further behind at 15 and so on. So obviously when you're looking to improve outcomes at Key Stage 4, you can't do it without improving the base that comes before that. So although the recommendation was about Key Stage 4, it has to come from before that, and pupils have to have skills developing well at all phases of their education. So therefore getting it right in primary school is vital, getting it right in Key Stage 3 is vital. The quality of teaching and learning here is very important, to make sure that you've got good quality teaching and learning right across all phases of education, so that people are getting a really good daily diet of teaching. You know, Estin feel that there is too much of a focus on catch-up programs in school where children have fallen behind. If the diet is right for children, then you need less catch-up. You only need catch-up for those pupils who have either been away from school for an extended period or who've got a specific need. The majority of pupils shouldn't need to be catching up if the teaching is right and is meeting their needs at each phase. So yes, you do need a stronger base. If you're going to make improvements in year 11, you obviously need a stronger base coming through. So it's improvements right across the board that are needed to bring everybody working together. And I think as an authority, you've started to look at that whole picture, haven't you, through your assessment project that you're taking forward. You've got everybody working together and trying to bring about improvements right across the board.
I mention that because most of the results figures that we had for the earlier key stages, again based on teacher assessments, and this has been a bugbear of this committee and when we first heard about it, was there a possibility that there was that because our teacher assessments were higher than they truly were, that there was a feeling that maybe the children were better than they were, and that maybe as a result it dictated how we worked, maybe influenced how we looked on those children at coming up to Key Stage 4.
Yes, obviously, if teachers are going to move children on, they need to have a very accurate picture of where they are, so you pitch the learning in the right way for them. And also, if your teacher assessment is higher than pupils' actual ability, then target setting is going to be difficult for you, because you're setting targets at the end of Key Stage 3 and Key Stage 4 that are not based on the pupils' actual attainment. So yes, that's all part of the bigger picture. You're quite right. You need that accurate data, which I think you'd recognise before the monitoring team came back. You need that accurate data in order to plan appropriate learning experiences and move pupils from where they actually are working to where you want them to be.
Can I ask, how should we be tackling the issues of literacy and numeracy as an authority and as a scrutiny committee? What can we do to progress that?
Well, it's important, first of all, to make sure that the schools have got the quality of teaching in English or Welsh and mathematics lessons right, because obviously that's where the teaching of these skills occurs. So you've got two aspects of this. You've got the actual teaching of the skills that need to come through very strongly in those lessons. So you need good quality English and maths and Welsh teachers who are ensuring that pupils are getting the correct teaching and reaching the correct standards, which they then use to apply those skills across the curriculum. So you're not going to be able to raise standards in literacy and numeracy across the curriculum unless the pupils are acquiring those skills through their daily diet of their English, Welsh and mathematics lessons. So that's the first point. You obviously need to appoint well-qualified teachers, provide good quality training for them, and ensure that schools work very swiftly to tackle any underperformance in teaching, so that schools have got those robust performance management processes in, that if pupils in a year group or in a class are not making the progress that is expected of them, that is tackled early, so that you intervene at an early stage with teachers to ensure that you can bring them up to the level required to bring about improvements for pupils. You need, as a committee, a good picture of how good English and Welsh and Maths are being taught across all the phases in the local authority schools. There are a number of Estyn Remit reports. You asked for some advice on where you might go to look at practice. There are a number of Estyn Remit reports on the Estyn website relating to literacy and numeracy. And these reports, when Estyn produce a thematic report on the Welsh Government's request, they always make recommendations for schools, but they also make recommendations for local authorities. Okay, and that could be a starting point to look at some of those documents relating to best practice in teaching literacy and numeracy, and have a look at what the local authority recommendations are or the consortia recommendations are, and see how far you are encompassing those in the work of the local authority.
Thank you for that. I mean, I think it is in our sort of work basket that we look at that, but I think the recommendations there that you made would be very useful.
Could I just ask a supplementary question, Chair? It's been reported that there's a shortage of maths teachers, or good maths teachers. And another area that we have been concerned with as a committee is a supply teacher. It's been really poor, and it's been reported through the different key stages that the supply teachers are not up to standard. Is there anything that we could do to, or you could recommend that we could improve it?
No, Estyn have noted the same thing as you, actually. If you look back through Estyn reports on supply teachers, we're finding the same thing as you, and there are definite shortages in secondary schools in highly qualified maths and science teachers, so it is a national issue. It's nothing that's just relevant to your local authority.
Councillor.
You've mentioned the thematic reports and the other resources available to local authorities. Looking at your letter, is there anything specifically for Torfaen that you could recommend that the local authority actions to help with the issue around failing to meet any of the 3 benchmark targets for 2015 in key performance stages 3 and 4 based on free school meal assessment, concretely just for Torfaen?
You're quite close to the benchmarks in all 3, so it would just be making sure that schools' target setting processes are ensuring that you aim to meet those in the first place, and then making sure that the good quality teaching that comes along behind that ensures pupils have the skills appropriate to be successful in those assessments and those examinations.
Sorry, can I just say, given the work that we've undertaken on teacher assessments, are Estyn applying pressure on Welsh Government to ensure there's a national framework is put in place for key stages 2 and 3 to ensure comparability of data?
Yes, you'll be aware of the review of the curriculum carried out by Professor Donaldson over the last few years, and the document Successful Futures, which Welsh Government has produced in response to his findings. That the curriculum review will redefine assessment and accountability measures for the future. So there are plans in place as an accountability group looking at that at the moment. It's too early at the moment to say where that will go. We're not sure ourselves, but Estyn will obviously be pushing for valid and reliable assessment data in primary and Key Stage 3, as we see this as a major weakness in the current system. It might be useful for you as an authority to look at, and I know you've started doing this, to look at, when you look at teacher assessments, look at the Welsh Government's reading and numeracy test outcomes alongside each other to get a fuller picture of what you're looking at.
I myself have had anecdotal evidence from teachers not from a teacher in a neighbouring authority about when children have, she's a secondary teacher, and when children have entered into year 7, and saying that in too many cases she and her colleagues are finding that what they see from teacher assessment and what they see in actuality bears little relation to the two, and I think this is a thing which I think is a concern right across the board.
It is, and I think this authority quite rightly started to tackle that, earlier last year and the year before. And I think you've got other authorities within the region here have started to come on board with that already. So hopefully, moving forward, that's an issue that will be addressed. I think everybody's aware of it. We're aware that when we're going into schools, we're making judgments about schools based on assessment data that is not always accurate and reliable, and we're aware of that.
We have alluded to it in the previous questions. Attainment relies heavily on good teaching. Are you seeing issues with schools not being able to employ suitable teachers in certain subject areas?
Yes, I think we covered that earlier, didn't we, in our discussion about the science and the maths teachers. Those particular areas are difficult for schools to recruit. And again, Welsh Government is aware of that.
Can I ask, are there any good examples the committee should be aware of by way of other authorities supporting children with more able and talented and closing the gap for free school meal pupils?
Yes, we had a look at that when we saw your question. In terms of more able and talented pupils, Swansea and Cardiff local authorities are doing well in terms of more able pupils relative to the number of free school meal pupils they've got, so it might be worth you liaising with those and seeing what they're doing. Taking on board that this might be due to what individual schools are doing rather than what the local authority is doing, which is what you'd be concerned about, but be aware of that. It varies from school to school. Closing the gap for free school meal pupils. Merthyr Tydfil has made good progress with the free school meal pupils at that level 2 plus indicator, the GCSEs with English, Welsh and Maths, and with cap points. And Swansea has the best performance in Wales for free school meal pupils at level 2 plus, with some very good secondary school performance. So it might be worth you looking at those. In addition, I mentioned the Estyn website earlier and the thematic reports. There are also best practice studies on there. And there are many on there about improving outcomes for both more able and talented pupils and those eligible for free school meals. And again, it could be something that you ask of officers and schools, what use do they make of those reports, to bring about improvements in their own practice. There are, as I say, recommendations in there for schools. Two that might be relevant that I looked at when I was coming here were Tackling Deprivation and Raising Standards, which came out in 2014, and Learner Support Services for Pupils aged 14 to 16, which also came out in 2014, so they might be a starting point. We also, when Ceredigion was inspected in 2013, which is a few years ago now, one of the comments that was made about in their report was that they had a very comprehensive database. They knew every pupil and every pupil's attainment at each phase. So, so for accountability purposes, that was very helpful to the local authority. So that might be worth looking at as well, but bear in mind that that report is a couple of years old now, and obviously things move on within local authorities.
Next question.
Recommendation 2.
Recommendation 2, sorry.
Pardon?
Recommendation 2, next question.
The committee is concerned regarding the reliance of reducing needs on organisations, projects that are grant funded. Is this the case across Wales?
I'll take that question. We're not in a position to comment on the reliance of grant funding or otherwise to reduce needs across Wales. Our focus is on how well you as an authority use the resources that you have in conjunction with your partners, whether they're grant funded or not, to reduce the numbers of children and young people becoming NEETs and the impact that has. So we don't sort of get drawn into whether it's grant funded or not grant funded. It's how well you use what you have and what impact that makes.
So, Chair, well, as I said, there are so many. One of the things we speak about that come to this committee and in other places as well, about our relationship with things such as Families First, Communities First, and Flying Start. And the in word is alignment, which we hear a lot of at the moment. How would you say that this authority is doing on working with such organisations such as this, which are Welsh Government funded, and how we work together to basically to solve this problem with those organisations?
Again, we didn't consider the Welsh Government funded projects in isolation. So we didn't say this project is really good at doing this or this project. What we looked at is all the different strategies that you're using as a local authority together in reducing needs. So we talked about the Key Stage 2 to Key Stage 3 transition, the RONI indicator, in identifying the needs. We talked about the Positive Pathways group, the Keeping in Touch group, the Families First, Communities First, Flying Start, Bridges into Work. So it's all of those and the impact that they have, rather than disaggregating and isolating individual projects, because we're inspecting the local authority, not specifically individual projects. However, what we did say is that there was improved partnership working amongst these different agencies for pupils who are not in education, employment, training, or at risk of becoming so, and this has resulted in more young people getting good and timely support to keep them in education, employment, or training.
But as one of our concerns in this committee, and also in other committees that on the subject, is, as I said, it's the alignment of the services. Things such as, because, for example, Communities First and Flying Start are based on areas, whereas Families First is based on people in particular. And I think that, and our concern is, do we end up with, say, everyone piling into our concern is, do we end up with say everyone piling in on one person and then another person falling through the net because maybe they're not, wouldn't come under any of these organisations. I think that's part of that is one of our concerns, that because they're aimed at certain people, that certain other people might miss out. Is there a danger of that happening?
What we've said. What we've said within the report is that the partnership working is there, and implicit in that is that there appears to be the alignment that you're covering the different groups. We didn't identify any particular groups that weren't being addressed in that. So in terms of alignment, it would appear that there is that alignment. Again, I must emphasise that we're not differentiating between Welsh Government funded projects or any other projects that you have. It's how the local authority is addressing those areas.
I think really that is the work of the Children and Young People's Partnership Board, is to make sure that all these services work together and the support goes into the areas that is needed. So that's part of their work. Station 3. Question?
Thank you, Chair. What evidence is there of schools not embracing our work to align assessment and you get 2 for the price of 1 here. How should we challenge them as an authority and scrutiny committee?
Okay, I'll take that. Thank you. During the monitoring visit, Farouk mentioned that we looked at a lot of documentation that was provided for us, and obviously within that documentation there were details of the moderation meetings that had taken place within schools, and how schools had come together to look at the pupil standards and agree that a level was a certain level, whether it was in this school or that school. Obviously, we had lists of schools that had attended those meetings, and as we were looking through the documentation, it was apparent that some of the schools, secondary schools in particular, had not engaged as fully in the process as the primary schools. I think we found there was better buy-in to that new process from the primary schools than there was for the secondary schools, because local authority officers will know who those schools are. In terms of what you can do about it, from 2015, there was a Welsh Government document that came out in November, which said it's called Statutory Assessment for the Foundation Phase and End of Key Stages 2 and 3, and it now states it is compulsory for all schools to participate in cluster moderation, and that head teachers must ensure that their school representatives attend all cluster group moderation meetings to moderate work in English, Welsh, mathematics and science. So that will give the authority and yourself as a scrutiny committee a point of reference that, you know, schools have to, from this year on now, from 2015, they have to take part in those moderation meetings. So that should alleviate that issue for you. And of course, you have to. It's at an early stage of development, isn't it? So I think as schools see the benefit of it, they're more likely to come on board. And it wasn't a huge problem. It was 1 or 2, as I say, of the secondary schools that weren't participating in the same way as the primary schools were.
Any other questions? Can I ask the question then? When scrutinising attainment at different key stages, is there a best practice set of measures we should be looking at to ensure we're getting the full picture of performance?
Thank you. I'll answer that as well. Yes. What we feel is that if you looked at what the Welsh Government data collection is as a starting point, so in the foundation phase, you're obviously going to be interested in the foundation phase indicator, which is the number of pupils who get the expected outcome in language, literacy and communication, mathematical development and personal development. There's also a compulsory baseline profile in place now for reception from 2015, so local authority officers might be looking at how schools are operating that and what results they're getting from that. Performance measures in Key Stage 2 and 3. You've got the core subject indicators for both of those key stages that where pupils are at the expected level for English or Welsh and maths and science. So you're already looking at those. Remember to look at progress as well as attainment, because you've got that information. You can look at the progress made between the end of year 2 and the end of year 6, or the end of year 6 and the end of year 9. So it's important to look at progress rather than just attainment. You've got the year 2 to year 9 national reading and numeracy tests, and again you can do the same with that. The local authority will have progress measures from year to year as well as actual attainment levels within a year. At Key Stage 4 you've again got a core subject indicator of English, with English or Welsh and maths and science at the expected level, and then you've got a series of indicators that we referred to throughout the report. And as Farouk said, the target for the authority during the time that it was in special measures was to improve the Level 2 indicator, which was 5 GCSEs at A star to C, including English or Welsh and maths. And that's the one that you have made the improvement in. So the others that you would be looking at then would be Level 1, which is pupils who get 5 GCSEs at A star to G. Level 2, which is 5 GCSEs A star to C. Level 2 inclusive, the one that I've spoken about already, which is the focus for you, which was the one to include English, Welsh or maths. The cap point score, which is pupils' best 8 results across the subjects, and there is also an indicator that will tell you about 5 A stars or A grades at GCSE, which would be looking at your more able, which would, you know, you'd be looking at that indicator as well, which would help you to know how your more able pupils are doing.
Can I just add that when we looked at your self-evaluation report, we were quite concerned at the lack of focus on the range of performance indicators. We looked back at the letter that we sent in 2013, and we quite clearly identified some of those indicators where performance was not good for Torfaen, and they hadn't been referred to at all in the self-evaluation we referred to there. So, I mean, Jane's just given you the list of some of those areas you can look at.
Okay. Recommendation 4. Sorry,
how does our relationship with the EAS and schools compare with the other 4 local authorities? Have we got the balance right now for driving improvement forward?
Okay, I'll take that. We don't have the information at the moment to say how you compare in your relationship with the EAS with the other local authorities. What we can say is that there are definite improvements in relationship with the Education Achievement Service and schools. On a previous visit, I remember asking the question, how do you know you're getting value for money from the Education Achievement Service? You're paying in to buy a service, how do you, and there wasn't a robust response to that. Since then, now, what you have done is you've got a head of learning whose role includes monitoring the quality and effectiveness of the Education Achievement Service. You've got better working relationships with schools, and you've strengthened your ability to hold the EAS to account. Senior officers, elected members and partners have an improved understanding of performance. You've got the subcommittee in scrutiny that scrutinises performance of individual schools, and you've had all the secondary schools to that, and some primary schools, I understand, as well. You're more, you've received the training to be able to challenge and understand data a lot better. So what we've said there is you're able to hold the schools to more to account, and the EAS a lot better. What you might be interested in, again, referring back to our website, in June 2015 we undertook a thematic report with regards to how well the regional consortia, so it's not just the EAS but the other regional consortia, how well they were improving schools. Again, if you look at that on our website, that might be something to give you an idea of what's happening there. You might also be interested to know that we are inspecting the EAS later this year, as well as all the other regional consortia. So when those reports come out, that would give you an indication of that. With regards to this getting the balance right, what we can say is that it's certainly improved. So in having the balance has improved. Whether you've got it right or not will only be evident in terms of the impact that has on outcomes.
As a scrutiny committee, what areas do you feel we should prioritise going forward?
Okay, thank you. I'll take that. Ultimately, the areas you prioritise, it's for you as a scrutiny committee to work out and take forward. But we've given you pointers. We've talked about focusing on evaluating performance against the wider range of indicators, Key Stage 3 and Key Stage 4, which Jane has gone through for you. Improving, looking at the improving pupil skills in literacy and numeracy across all the key stages. You may also want to put in there digital competency, because there's a focus on that as well under Donaldson, so it might be something that you might want to consider. Again, I can't dictate to you what you do, but something else you might want to look at is the accuracy of your self-evaluation processes and the ongoing self-evaluation that you do, and then making sure that any shortcomings identified in that are addressed appropriately.
Chair, this might be the opportune time. In order to support the committee, I was just wondering whether you would be prepared to leave the written answers to our posed question because there's an awful lot of information coming out here. I was just wondering if you would be prepared to leave the committee a copy of your notes.
We won't leave a copy here, but what we can do is email you some kind of amended answers to that. If that's okay, maybe we can do that if you find it helpful. But then we can leave all the answers. But yeah, okay.
Okay, recommendation 5 we are on now then. It's about partnership approach. Any?
Okay. Does your partnership approach bring in all the right services together? Can their approach be improved?
Okay, I'll take that one. It appears that your partnership approach has the right services, but we can't say whether it has all the right services together without inspecting that in detail. I said it before, unless we inspect all your services in detail, we can't say that it's got all the right services. For the same reason, we're not able to make in a position to make any recommendation as to how it can be improved. Without inspecting them all in detail, we can't say, look, this is a recommendation to that, how that can be improved. What we can say is about your partnership framework, that partnership framework has an appropriate range of outcome indicators for each of the 7 core aims, and partners make good use of the monitoring tool to identify where performance is below expectations and plan their improvements. So you've got the approach we're saying is a positive approach. We're saying you've got partners in place that are working well with you. Whether you've got all the right services together is not a position we're able to comment on without inspecting that in detail. Okay.
Is that my question? Did you have any questions there? No?
Yeah, it's well, it's a more kind of general question, if I may. Yeah, I mean, I'm going to sound really pessimistic now, actually. In your experience of assessing other local authorities and other bodies, what would you say would be the greatest risk that we face if we were to slip back and somehow not manage to hang on to the improvements we made, improvements in practice and improvements in outcomes? What would you say the things are that would be the greatest risks that we face, the things we should guard against most securely, the taking our eye off the ball, if you like? Where would you see that lying?
I think the greatest risks that you have in taking that eye off the ball is pulling back the focus that you've got on improving outcomes for children and young people. You've got the Children and People's Improvement Board there, which has got the overview. So a risk would be if that board somehow the membership of that board is watered down in some way. You've got the senior level. I think that's a strength. The senior level at which you've got buy-in to that board. Then underneath that board, then you've got the partnerships and how those partnerships are all working together. If something happens there in terms of those partnerships disaggregating, but then together with that, then you've got the recovery board, which is helping you to maintain that focus. Now, if the recovery board is taken away, you've got the Children and People's Improvement Board, but that recovery board was providing an additional external perspective with external support. So those are the risks, really. And that's why in the letter we said you may benefit from having some kind of external agency that can help you with that. You've asked a question on that. We can't say whether the Children and People's Improvement Board can replace the Recovery Board. That's not a decision for us to make. But if that did happen, you would benefit from some external input at quite a senior level to be able to keep that momentum going. So those are where I would see the risks.
I think we've questions that members wanted to ask. Mr. Rees? I think we've mentioned about the external experts there. Okay.
If I could just ask a general question. I don't want to put you on the spot. You obey anyway. Do you feel, well, I said that, but has successive national government and Welsh government policies in change to education had a result on teaching and pupil attainment? You know, with the successive changing?
I think we're at the stage now, aren't we, where with the revision of the curriculum and assessment procedures, where we are starting a new journey in effect. I don't know how, I can't say how that will be, the political landscape may change, and I don't know whether that will influence that or not. What we do know from Welsh Government is that all parties have said they are committed to Professor Donaldson's successful futures, and they're buying into that. So hopefully we will get some, whatever happens, we will get some continuity in the priorities for education that, you know, that we've been taking forward so far. I don't know whether that answers your question or not.
Any other questions from members? If not, can I thank you very much, Farouk and Jane, for coming along this morning. It's been very helpful for us, and we certainly will take advantage of all the advice you gave us. Thank you very much.